So we'll talk about the FDASIA implementation, particularly around the accelerated approval part of the bill. Just one word about the Everylife Foundation. We're dedicated to improving the development of rare disease therapeutics through science-based strategies, and we want to try to get a more practical and scientifically sound change in policy where necessary to try to improve the predictability of the process. And we work that through both workshops and policy. We believe no disease too rare to deserve treatment. That is, all rare disease really should have something if we have the science to fix it. All treatments should be safe and effective, and we do believe that we could be doing more with the science we already have, that there is science that could be translated, and we should be doing more to make that happen. Among the provisions in FDASIA, 901 was talking about enhancing the accelerated approval pathway, and there's a couple sets of language in there were important. I want to highlight the one that's most important. Just for those who don't know, accelerated approval is about approving drugs based on a biomarker endpoint like a blood test or urine test, which sometimes are easier to study than clinical endpoints, particularly for diseases that take a long time to develop or are very difficult to measure. It's been very successful in HIV and cancer. In this case, the challenge is using those biomarker endpoints, figuring out which ones are good enough to be used, and I think that's where the challenge has occurred in the rare disease area, where there's not a lot of historical science. The bill says that they should include, that their guidance should be developed that would incorporate novel approaches to the review of surrogate endpoints and looking at the type of data you might have available for a rare disease in that process. So that was sort of the basic requirement of accelerated approval, was to develop a guidance and to include some language on that. Just to give people a sense of the challenge, accelerated approval was first put together for HIV. It was very successful in terms of both HIV and cancer, with, as you can see, more than 100 approvals of new molecular entities since its initiation. In our most recent analysis, there were really about 6 of the rare genetic diseases have used the pathway, but only one of them really used a novel endpoint. The other one has used endpoints that already had approvals behind them and existing science from the regulatory precedent before. We think it's still very hard if you have an unusual disease that's never been studied before to get approval by this pathway. Now, the FDASIA asked for a guidance to be produced, and FDA did issue a draft guidance originally in 2013. It didn't address the rare disease issues very well. And then a final guidance was issued in 2014, which was improved. That is, it did have more attention paid to the rare disease issues. We don't know that it was fully compliant with what was required. We think that some part of this may be what we need to work on with the agency on policy and how they approach the accelerated approval pathway. But the guidance, we think, is a step forward, but we do think there's more work to be done in terms of allowing certain therapeutics which won't be developed by any other means to be able to use the pathway when necessary. Right now, the foundation has produced a white paper which includes a scientific framework about how to do it better. We realize that's something that's too detailed for a guidance, but we will publish that. It's opinions of experts in the field and patient foundations that look at, here's how you could do this process further. Here's how we could use our science and translate it into treatments more efficiently. So we hope that will help drive the implementation of FDASIA and the accelerated approval provisions that are they're discussed in the guidance, but perhaps not specific enough to know where it's going. We think the FDA is very interested in getting more treatments through the process, and I think they are interested in working with us. We'll continue to work with them through the workshop process. We do think there's more that needs to be done. We think, look, accelerated approval will be critical for some diseases, and we need to implement a very predictable process here. And I think the public is waiting for action. I think that there needs to be more than just a claim of flexibility. I think we need to understand how to do it so we can get more of these treatments started into the process. And we think with some help from those experts in the development that we can develop a process that is scientifically rigorous, that still moves the process forward and gets more rare diseases getting access to the accelerated approval pathway.